POAM. We have the instructions sitting right here. 5.1 tells you what the scope and the purpose of the POAM is. The system description. You got to give the name of it and the acronym. And you have to have a security categorization of what?
Moderate or low.
Methodology will tell you exactly what you need to do. Worksheet 1, System POAM. This is the section that you really need to pay attention to right here. Okay?
So
You need to.
scope isn't what we've already done?
Yes.
Okay.
The top portion tracks FSMA requirements. Okay? Is to identify the risk impact level, whether it be a high, medium, or low. Everyone has a medium system. Are you a federal or a contractor system? In this site, you would be a federal system. Is that understood? On the POAM, you have several different columns that we have to talk about. Column A, provide a unique identifier. You can use the control identifier like COAS1, AC1, AC2. Does that make sense? Because that's the identifier of that control that failed. It's easy to identify for you. Okay? The weakness description. Describe the weakness or part of the thing that failed in that assessment process. POAM is only for your failed controls after your first one. So if you had 18 failures, you list all 18 of them. Now you're going to make at least all but 5 compliant. You have to have 5 that fail. Like the second time. Okay? You need to be able to describe it. But if it's a sensitive failure, you don't have to describe it in detail, but just give me enough data to where I understand what's going on.
So we can use what we've already put in F3? So this is, we've already got most of what's in here.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. A lot of this is going to be regurgitation. Like I said, day 1. What you do in 1, you're going to be putting in other parts. Do remember, this is federal government stuff where they got to keep people employed. So what do? They create stuff that you've already done from 5 other people that already have a job, and you put it all together. That's that one person's job, okay? I'm just making fun of them, but that's the reality of it. The point of contact. You need to identify the person and their role, not just the person's name.
Shouldn't this be the person that it owns the policies and procedures?
No. It's going to be the person that's responsible for that failure control. So you may have an ISSO who is the only one that could fix this particular issue. It's not going to be the program manager would be the contact. It would be the point of contact for that person that failed on that control.
The person that can fix the control.
Yes.
Not the person who's in charge of the failure, but the person
The person that will be responsible for that failed control.
fixing it.
Yes.
Okay.
Resources required. If there's any additional resources that have not already been put on the system, you need to identify. A scheduled completion date. You need to tell me, if you have not already done so, when will this vulnerability be fixed? Now, remind you, the scheduled completion dates are estimates. Because you know good and well there's going to be a rainstorm somewhere that shuts down UPS in Memphis, and they're not going to get you your product on time. Okay? So a scheduled completion date means scheduled. I anticipate it will be done by this day. If you do not have one, you will use the word ongoing. In other words, that's your second failure. Milestones with completion dates. If you have to redo a system from scratch, and that's one of your failed controls, you need to provide me the milestones that would be all within that control to make that control successful. If you have multiple sub parts of it that are failed, each one of those are going to reach certain milestones to make that one successful again. Does that make sense? Those are the milestones that you complete. Now, if it's just a simple task of turning on a audit control, well, that's very simple, right? You just say that's one milestone to turn on the audit control or the event log. But if you have to turn on the event log but you don't have administrator rights, what's your other thing is you got to find an administrator to do the job. That's the second milestone. Does that make more sense? Milestones are steps to complete that particular action. Column G, the source of the discovery. How did you come across that weakness? Was it during your automated testing tool? Was it during an interview? Was it while deciphering or examining documents? Okay? Status. Is it completed? Has the task been completed? Not a date. Or ongoing? If it's ongoing, that means it's still failed. Is there any questions on that? So what you're doing is you're just filing all this information. Each line tells you what it is. Do not do quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, or quarter 4. This is your initial system POAM. That's all I want for this particular section. Does that make sense? If we had a secondary class to this and y'all all were in an advanced SSAC class, you would pick it up and go through the rest of the quarters. Does that make sense? Except I would have had a system for you to do in a certified and accredited. I may just do that for the next SSAC class, actually do a VM and they have to go through and accredit it and give them certain documents that they have to go and examine and tell me whether it met their minimum criteria or not. As y'all know, each time I teach a course I make it harder, right? Every semester it gets harder and harder. That's 5.1. Is there any questions on the POAM? It's pretty simple. One line on the Excel spreadsheet. You have like 10 columns to fill out. Pretty simple. 5.2. Come on. 5.2. You're going to write me a letter. You're going to say, Dear DAA, Designated Approving Authority, the Cyberspace Infrastructure Planning System certification statement is as follows. You're going to give me the background of the system description, okay? The summary of your findings. Remember, you had your summary of how many failures, how many passes, right? Put that in there. Statement of compliance. This system is compliant as of this. Here's what we have ongoing. So when you're in their findings, you're going to tell me what passed, what failed. Mainly, I only care about what failed. I want to make sure that they're not going to be a risk to my system or to my infrastructure. Statement of compliance. Do you feel as the assessor that this system is compliant or not? Are the risk minimal? Okay. You're going to give me your recommendations as an assessor. Your group will say, we recommend that this system be denied, be given an interim, or be given an authority to operate. You will have a signature line area, which will be a block for each person that's in your group. You must sign it, scan it, and upload it. Failure to sign it tells me you had no part on it, which means you'll get a 0 on this assignment. So it's in your best interest to sign this document. 5.2. Any questions? Pretty self-explanatory. 5.3. Conduct a risk determination. You will give me an executive summary which will include the introduction, the purpose, the scope, and the system description. You're going to describe all the components, elements, and users, site location. You're going to give me all this information. This is, you're telling me what risk are you finding with this system. This one is a big document.
I thought that was the math one. The P1s.
This is how you conduct it. Okay? Look at this entire system.
did this with all of this, using our security assessment plan, basically using all the documentation that we've already done.
Just a second, Kelly. This is one you were talking about. This was for your risk level to determine what kind of system you're going to have in the categorization of the failures. You should have done that in 4.3. Five 3 is this big document. Most of this stuff has already been done. This is going to be a copy and paste. Describe the approach used to conduct the assessment. You've already done your risk assessment. So, how did you do it? How do you characterize the system?
So we can just find the list of this and past submitted assignments. Okay. So it'll take a long time, but it's not hard.
There's a couple things you've got to come in here. Compile a list of potential threats associated with the assessed system. What are the threats to it? Risk assessment. List the findings. Vulnerability.
The threats statement, that is based on low, moderate, or high, right?
No, what? List the potential threats that are associated with that
The
system.
one above that.
Oh, the system characterization?
No, threat statement.
It's right here, the description of their threat statement.
Oh, well, it looks like threat statement is a whole.
It's a heading.
Okay.
Compile and list the potential threats associated with threat actions applicable to that assessed system.
These would be the ones that we selected, or just as a whole, just as a secure system. What?
Okay, if the system passed the control, is it a threat? Look at the ones that failed.
Okay.
Because if they failed, you failed them for a reason. Because they're a threat to your system. It's part of the risk. So you list what the fails were. Then you come around and then find out why. Give me these, list the findings, which include cross-reference number with a brief description of the observation. Basically, you're going back and saying, the fails, here's why. You did that in 4.4, 4.3, 4.2. And then summary, you're just providing a report and giving me the recommendations and the necessary actions. So a lot of it, like I said, is a copy and paste.
And then you're organizing it.
Exactly. And then you give it a little bit more to it. Does that make sense?
Yep.
It's not that you're writing me a 30-page dissertation on this. You're writing me, you're putting things together so you can see how it flows and to better scope, give a better scope and definition of this assessment. Is everyone okay with that? You understand it? Is there any other questions on 5.3?
Now, this is not going to be the same scope that we used in 5.2, though.
What scope?
For
Right here?
in 5.1,
Yeah. It's the scope of the system,
the scope of the system. Okay.
which is your system description. That's why in the introduction, I just gave you some ideas with the bullet points, whether you call it a purpose, a scope. You're telling me about the system, the background of the system. What is it? You're introducing me to the system. Remember, I'm a DAA. I know nothing about your system. You're having to tell me everything about your system, what its flaws are, and how you plan on fixing them, when you're fixing them. And then this is what this document's going to help you do. You put this,
Just like in 5.2, the background or system description.
they're all going to be the same.
Okay.
Y'all understand that?
Does it need to be the same throughout all of your documents?
Yes.
Just wondering if
That's why when you identify your system, you have to give it a title and what it's going to be doing, the functionality of the system. And that's what you're going to be giving the entire thing on it. Any questions on this? For the last time. Okay.